welcome back to my channel. Welcome to today's video where we're going to be discussing the top 10 bad habits that you are doing that are stopping you from getting a better hba1c or improving your time in target or just generally feeling more in control of your diabetes. And how do I know you are doing these things? Well, it's because I do them or used to do them. These are all habits that I accumulated over my 15 years of living with diabetes, and so I am sharing them with you because I'm sure I'm not the only person doing any of these things. So do not worry, this video will not just be me judging you and pointing out the things you're doing wrong. I will also be sharing how I have stopped doing these habits, or if there are things that I am still working on improving, then I'll be sharing what I am doing to try and stop doing these things. Since I have been paying attention to these little tiny things throughout the day, I have noticed a reduction in my hba1c. It has gone for me down by 0.4%. So these little things do definitely add up. And with that being said, let's just get right into the first habit that you need to kick, and that is over-treating your hypos. I know, I really do know how horrible it is being hypo and how hungry you get and how those cravings are just like top of mind. All you want is food. Your stomach is like a bottomless pit. You just want to stop the shaking and the sweats and the dizziness, and you want to feel normal again, and it's just really hard to stop eating basically when you are hypo. But that is one thing that you should really tackle head on as soon as you can, because over-treating a hypo will just lead to a high and then probably another low if you overcorrect that, and you'll just be on this roller coaster, and that is, number one, really not a healthy place to be in, and number two, really difficult situation to be living in. If you're going to pick one habit to kick from this video, then please start with that one. And if you want some help with that, then head over to my video that I did all about hypos, how I correct my hypos now. I tend to only go up to about 7 after I treat a hypo and stay steady. I've got my hypo formula down, and so I did share that in a whole entire separate YouTube video all about how to correct a hypo without over-treating. Bad habit number 2 is forgetting how much you injected. And this sounds really stupid because you're literally injecting fluid into your body that can literally kill you, yet sometimes you forget how much you've given yourself. I find this if I'm, for example, going through one of my periods where my insulin sensitivity is changing and I forget what basal I should be doing that day compared to the day before, or if I was deciding between 2 different doses before doing a bolus injection, and then I inject and then afterwards I'm like, hang on, how much insulin have I just given myself? I don't know. It's super easy to do, especially because diabetes becomes so routine. Sometimes you'll be thinking about injecting and you'll be like doing other things, and you look down, suddenly you've injected without even being like conscious of it, and you're like, what have I just done? Who knows? But that can actually be, number one, really dangerous if you inject too much, and number two, just make things really tricky to manage afterwards if you go high or low, and you just won't know why, because if you don't know how much insulin you've injected, how the hell can you know where you're gonna go? So now what I do before I do my bolus injections is I stop any conversation that I'm having, I look down, I count to 3, sort out however much insulin I'm doing, inject, and then just carry on with my day, just to give myself those 3 seconds to really think about what I'm doing before I go and do something stupid or just do something without really thinking, and then I can't track anything. Habit number 3 is, to be fair, quite a tricky one to always plan ahead with, because we have no idea what's going on with the Great British weather, but it is not keeping your insulin cool. Now obviously normally you don't need to keep your insulin in the fridge on the one that you're using, so you should store your insulin in the fridge, but the pen that you're using or whatever, they tell you don't need to keep it in the fridge. But when we had recently those 2 weeks of scorching hot weather, my insulin definitely did not hold up when I was carrying it around outside or putting it in my car, which the aircon doesn't work. So, and I was driving for 2.5 hours, and I forgot to put my insulin in a Frio. So I went on a weekend away with barely working insulin, which was not good. Whereas if I'd thought ahead and packed my Frio cool pack, then I would have been completely fine. And to be honest, even days where I'm not even traveling far, but even if I just go for my I go for a little half an hour walk in the middle of the day just to like get the blood flowing again, and if I take my insulin out with me and it gets really hot, then it's kind of screwed. So I have actually started on those really hot days just putting my insulin pen in a Frio bag even when I just go for my walk, just because you don't want to risk it like going bad, and then if you're high you might not know, oh, was my insulin bad or was it something else? I will leave some links in the description box to Frio bags and cool bags that I find really helpful for keeping insulin cool. Now, tip number 4 is one that I'm particularly not proud of, and that is forgetting to do your basal injection. I have done this too many times. To be honest, it had been a while since I'd forgotten my basal injection, and I normally used to forget it in the evening because sometimes, you know, you're out and you're having fun and you just forget and you go to bed and you wake up in the middle of the night really high and you're like, oh my god, I'm an actual moron. But then the other day I finished my workout, and I normally do my basal injection between my workout and my shower. So I finished my workout, had my nice stretch, and then the postman came, so I had to run downstairs and get the post. And then I got back up, had my shower, was getting ready for the day, and suddenly realised, oh my god, I haven't done my basal injection because the postman rang the doorbell at the exact wrong moment. And to be honest, I don't really have much of a tip to help you with this one. Like, normally my plan is pretty foolproof. Like I said, I like place it in to a specific part of my morning routine, and then I'm not going to forget it. But then there is the occasional moment when some outside factor just comes in and throws you off and you forget your basal, and luckily normally I do remember like half an hour to an hour later and I'm like, ah, and then I just inject. But yeah, all I can say is put it into your routine, especially like in the evenings as well. Put it into your routine. I still haven't got that one down, although normally I'm fine. I normally don't forget in the evening too often now, but just remember your basal, because it can be really crap if you don't. Bad habit that you are doing is something that a lot of people may not consider a bad habit, but I personally do, and that is micromanaging your diabetes. And I don't mean paying attention to your diabetes. That's a very good habit. Please do not stop paying attention to your diabetes. But what I mean is micromanaging to the point where you are checking your blood sugars every half an hour to an hour just to check where they are. You're so scared of going high that you correct before you need to, and then you crash because you think you're gonna get there before it gets high, and then actually no, you weren't going high in the first place, you just hadn't left it long enough since you ate and for your insulin to act. And just when you get to the point where you're so nitty gritty, like picking every tiny detail apart to the point where sometimes you're overcorrecting and you feel like you have to have such a strict routine to keep your diabetes stable that when you're suddenly not in routine, it becomes impossible to manage. I really found this over lockdown, to be honest. For the first few weeks when we had like no life and we literally couldn't do anything, I had nothing to do but micromanage my diabetes. So I got so nitpicky with everything that as soon as I went and did something out of routine, I found it tricky to manage it again. And then I felt even worse when my blood sugars weren't perfect, because my blood sugars had got so good in those first few weeks. As soon as I went back to living a normal life and them not being as perfect, I felt so defeated. Whereas if I just learned to kind of let go, you're going to feel a hell of a lot better. And not only does micromanaging lead to you making probably more mistakes than you would if you hadn't been micromanaging, it can also lead to burnout really quickly. And this is something that I have personally struggled with in the past, where you just feel overwhelmed with diabetes. And so I have filmed a video all about that, which I will link to this one, just kind of going over my experience with burnout and explaining my tips to help you avoid burnout yourself, and just kind of pointing out the times when you might experience burnout in case you don't realise that you are digging yourself into a hole with your diabetes, so you can get yourself out of it before you get in it. Micromanaging your diabetes is a surefire way to get there if you are just being too nitpicky and too much of a perfectionist with it. You're never going to be happy, and you're always going to think that you're not doing it right, and you're always going to overcorrect things, and it just won't work. My 6th tip is kind of the opposite of the last one, and that is doing those last minute mad rush prescription orders when you think you might actually run out of insulin or needles because you've left it so long. I had this when I was about to go on my year abroad, and they suddenly told me that they couldn't get all my medication in time, and I was like, you what? I'm leaving the country for 3 months and you're not giving me needles? And it's just a massive panic. It puts a lot of stress on you, and it's just something that you don't want to be going through. What I do now is I just put a pop-up on my calendar to remind me to order my prescription at a certain time. Either you can, if you're someone who uses the exact same amount of supplies in the same time frame, so obviously my Libras, I always know when they're going to run out because they're a 2-week supply, but in terms of needles and insulin, it kind of depends how often you're injecting. So I just have a reminder on my phone every week to go off to say check your prescription supplies, and if I need something I order it then, and if I don't, then it will wait till next week. And that is just a surefire way to make sure that you are not last minute scrambling around for some supplies that you may not be able to get hold of, because that is not fun. The 7 bad habit that is probably causing you blood sugar havoc is going to bed before your sugars are sorted out. Sometimes you just think, I want to go to sleep, and I'm going to sleep and I don't care. You know, sometimes maybe you've got an arrow that's going slightly up and you think, it'll be fine, I'll sort it out in the morning. Or if you've got an arrow going slightly down, you think, oh, I'll wake up if I go low, it'll be fine. What if you don't wake up? I woke up yesterday morning having been low for 3 whole hours, and if my alarm hadn't gone off, who knows when I would have woken up. Side note, my sugars were actually fine when I went to bed, so this tip isn't relevant to me yesterday. But if you go to bed thinking it'll be fine, it'll sort itself out, it probably won't. Diabetes doesn't sort itself out. You sort your diabetes out, you know? Obviously there are occasions when you are, if you're like really struggling for sleep, and there are times when diabetes gets too much and you do just need to go to bed. But in those cases it may be best to get an early night and then just set an alarm for a few hours after you've gone to sleep. Just check your blood sugars, do anything that you need to do, and go back to bed. I guess it depends how well you sleep. I find personally that if I wake up in the middle of the night, 9 times out of 10, as soon as I've done whatever I need to do, I am straight back to sleep. I am asleep like a log. And so I find that waking myself up in the middle of the night isn't such a big deal, and I would rather get to bed nice and early, feel like I've had an early night, maybe be up for 10 minutes in the middle of the night and then just go back to sleep. It does obviously totally depend on you and as an individual and how you sleep, but if you do think that you are not where you want to be before you go to bed and you don't want to wake yourself up in the middle of the night, I would recommend just staying up a little tiny bit just to sort out whatever you need to sort out, because if you are high overnight, then that is a really long period of time to be high. Obviously it can't be avoided all the time. I have nights where I'm above target the entire night long, and then you wake up in the morning and you've been in target 50% of the day, and it feels like you're starting the day on a really bad note, which isn't fun. But if it is something that you can see going to happen, don't just bury your head in the sand. The 8th habit that may be holding you back with your diabetes control, if you have a Libra, is forgetting to do a finger prick test if you think your Libra is inaccurate, and relying too heavily on your sensor. So sometimes I forget that actually this isn't always going to be 100% right, and sometimes I will see a number that I'm not expecting to see and I will just correct for it. So sometimes I'll see a number that says I'm high, I don't think I should be high, and I'll correct it, and then find out go low and find out later actually I wasn't high, my sensor was just inaccurate. And I'm quite bad at forgetting to double check. If you do double check with a finger prick test, if you think your sensor is being inaccurate, you will save yourself so much grief. Sometimes it's inaccurate, I find, after a shower, or if you're doing a period of like really high intensity exercise and your blood sugar is changing really rapidly. There are several points in time when your sensor may not be accurate, and sometimes you just have a dud sensor anyway. So it's always worth, if you think it doesn't look right and it's not what you're expecting, to go ahead and do a finger prick test, because like I said, you don't want to be correcting a low or a high only to find out that you weren't really low or high anyway and then having to correct the other way. It's much easier just to do a finger prick test. To be honest, I haven't found a way of reminding myself to do this yet, so if you have any suggestions for remembering to do a finger prick test, please leave them in the comments below, because I will be so grateful and you'll probably spare me so many unnecessary corrections. My 9th diabetes bad habit is guesstimating your carbs. And I know it is hard sometimes when you're out and about, when you're eating at a friend's house, you don't always have packages available to read, and sometimes you do have to do your best estimate. And if you are in this situation, I do have a video all about carb counting and how to do it when you are not preparing your own food, which I will link to this one. But when you are preparing your own food, just taking the time to weigh things out and measure things will be so much easier. Obviously, once you have been eating the same kind of food for a while and you can see roughly how much it is, your guess is probably going to be fairly accurate. But when you're eating a new food, or if it's something that you haven't had in a while, or you just think you need a refresher, just go and weigh it. Just put the numbers in your calculator, look up the carbohydrates on the food package or on Google or in a Carbs and Cows book or anything. Look it up. Just put in the effort to go and do it, because you will be so much happier with yourself 2 hours down the line if you have a nice steady graph and you are nice in range, rather than if you have had a massive blood sugar spike or you're now hypo an hour after eating just because you didn't take the time to do your carb counting properly. I know it's a faff, I know, but it is our 10th bad diabetes habit. Is one I know you have done. You cannot tell me you have not done this if you're a type 1 diabetic, because you will be a liar, unless maybe you were diagnosed like yesterday and you haven't gone high yet. But if you have had a high blood sugar and you are diabetic, you will have rage bolus. And if you don't know what rage bolus is, that's when you correct your high blood sugar and it hasn't come down as quickly as you want it to. So you inject again and again and again until it comes down. But then what happens? It goes down really far and you go hypo. That is a rage bolus. That is every diabetic's worst habit, I am telling you now, and it is so difficult to stop yourself from doing. Honestly, it is the worst, because when you not only do you feel awful when you're high, you just panic about, like, what is this doing to my body? Am I damaging myself? Having a high blood sugar is really dangerous, isn't it? Like, it needs to come down right now. Sometimes they won't budge. Sometimes, especially if you've been sat down for a long time, they will not budge for anything. No matter how much insulin you do, it takes a while to get around your body and do what it's got to do, and it will not come down by just injecting more insulin. There are things you can do to get it to come down quicker, like going for a walk. This is my holy grail, honestly. If I am high, I will go for a walk, 15 minutes to half an hour, depending on like how much time I have, where I am, if it's raining, all that kind of thing, and it will come down straight away. But just injecting, sitting around for half an hour or 20 minutes and injecting again is going to do nothing. You will go low a few hours later. So please resist the temptation to rage bolus. Go for a walk. If you can't go for a walk, do some kind of activity where you are. If you're in the office, just get up and do some star jumps. No one's gonna judge you, or they might judge you, but it doesn't matter, because your health is more important. Or go to the loo, pretend to go to the loo and just stand in there and do 100 squats. Just do some movement as soon as you've done your injection, and your blood sugar will come down so much faster, which is now, number one, great for your sugars, and number two, going to stop you from rage bolusing. I know it's really hard to stop doing, and it took me a long time to kind of develop my own techniques to bring down my blood sugar faster without using more insulin, but walking works for me. Drinking, also drink a lot of water. But yeah, I'm not going to go into all of it now, because I do actually have a whole video on treating a high blood sugar faster, which again I will link here. Just please don't rage bolus. Please give your body time to do what it needs to do, and then only correct again if you really need to after a while. But yeah, those are the top 10 habits that you are probably doing at least one or two of that are hindering your diabetes management. So I hope, if anything, this has brought to your attention some behaviours that you may be doing without even realising, and hopefully given you some ideas on how to combat them so that you can feel more in control of managing your blood sugars and getting that better hba1c or time in target, or whatever it is you might be hoping for. So if this video was useful, please give it a little like, because yeah, like I always say, it really does help me to know what videos you are enjoying watching and which videos are helpful and informative for you. But for now, that is it for this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!